Everyone knows the iconic image, bearded revolutionary staring into the distance, on t-shirts, dorm room posters, protest banners across the world, but almost nobody talks about the last 18 hours. The schoolhouse floor soaked in blood, the hands hacked off with a military surgeon's saw, the body lashed to helicopter skids like cargo, which parts are legend, and which ones sit in CIA files marked classified for 57 years. October 8th, 1967, Quebrada del Churro Ravine, Bolivia. 39-year-old Ernesto Guevara leads 16 starving men through terrain that eats armies. 2 companies of Bolivian Rangers, 180 soldiers trained by U.S. Green Berets, close the circle at 5:45 a.m. The battle lasts 6 hours. When the smoke clears, Che's M1 carbine lies useless. Its firing pin snapped. 2 bullet wounds in his legs, hands raised in surrender. He shouts to approaching soldiers, "Do not shoot. I am Che Guevara, and I am worth more to you alive than dead." Sergeant Bernardino Huanca binds his wrists with rope. Blood pools in his boots as they march him 3 kilometers to La Higuera village, population 119, mostly indigenous Guarani people who watched their men flee when word spread that death was walking the mountains. The schoolhouse has 2 rooms, mud walls, corrugated tin roof. Che gets the smaller classroom. Wooden floor, stained dark from decades of use. His companion, Simon Cuba Sarabia, takes the other room. By nightfall, 5 more captured guerrillas fill the cramped space. The temperature drops to 8 degrees Celsius. No blankets. No medical treatment for the wounded. Just rope around their wrists and Bolivian soldiers with loaded weapons guarding the door. If you value documented revolutionary history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from declassified CIA memoranda released through the National Security Archive at George Washington University, specifically including CIA Director Richard Helms' classified reports to President Lyndon Johnson dated October 11th and 13th, 1967, and to CIA operative Felix Rodriguez's debriefing statement from June 1975, stored in agency files under reference DoD IMS Operations Group. Job 78-06423A. Now back to the information. Che refuses interrogation. 22-year-old schoolteacher Julia Cortez later describes his unbearable, piercing, and tranquil gaze. During their brief conversation the next morning, he points to the schoolhouse's broken windows and rotting floorboards. Anti-pedagogical, he tells her. Government officials drive Mercedes cars, while campesino students are expected to learn here. That's what we're fighting against. His last recorded words to a civilian, 6:15 a.m., October 9th, CIA operative Felix Rodriguez lands by helicopter in La Higuera with Colonel Joaquin Centeno Anaya of the Bolivian 8th Division. Rodriguez carries orders from Washington. Transport Guevara to Panama for interrogation. The CIA has planes on standby, but President René Barrientos in La Paz has already signed a different order. Execution. Immediately. Rodriguez enters the schoolhouse at 11:30 a.m. Che lies on the dirt floor, legs bound, hands still tied behind his back. The CIA man identifies himself as a Puerto Rican working for SR Intelligence. Che corrects him. Cuban accent gives him away. "I knew you'd find me eventually," Guevara says. They talk for 20 minutes about the Cuban economy, about Camilo Cienfuegos, death in a plane crash, about how Castro wasn't a communist until after the revolution succeeded. Shots ring out from the adjacent room. 2 other prisoners executed. Che's face goes white when Rodriguez confirms he's next. Then he composes himself. "It is better like this," he says. "I never should have been captured alive." He gives Rodriguez a message for his wife and for Fidel. They embrace. The CIA operative leaves the room at 1 p.m. Outside, the ranking officers draw straws to determine the executioner. Sergeant Mario Terran volunteers. 3 of his friends named Mario died in earlier firefights with Che's guerrillas. Personal motivation? He enters the schoolhouse at 1:15 p.m. carrying an M2 automatic rifle. I know you've come to kill me," Che says, sitting upright against the wall. "Shoot, coward. You're only going to kill a man?" Terran's hands shake. His first shots miss. Bullets slam into the mud wall inches from Che's head. Fear, adrenaline, the weight of killing a legend. He steadies the rifle, aims for the torso to avoid the head. Rodriguez's orders to make it look like a combat death, not an execution. 9 shots. Chest, arms, throat. Guevara dies within seconds. 1:20 p.m. Silence falls over La Higuera. But the brutality is just beginning. Bolivian soldiers lift Che's body onto a stretcher. Blood soaks through the canvas. A priest performs last rites over the corpse as they carry it to a waiting helicopter. The body gets lashed to the right landing skid with rope, arms and legs dangling in the wind. Rodriguez climbs into the cockpit wearing Che's steel Rolex GMT master watch, red and blue bezel catching sunlight. In his breast pocket, wrapped in notebook paper, tobacco from Che's final pipe, 30-minute flight to Vallegrande airstrip, altitude 1,950 meters. The helicopter touches down at 2:30 p.m. in front of waiting journalists and military officials. 4 foreign correspondents witness the arrival, including Björn Kumm from Swedish Aftonbladet, who later describes the scene in an exclusive for the New Republic on November 11th, 1967. They transport the body to Nuestra Senora de Malta Hospital, not for treatment, for display. The laundry room becomes a morgue, Che's corpse laid out on a concrete slab above a washing trough. Hospital staff wash the blood away, comb his matted hair, arrange his limbs in a Christ-like pose. His eyes remain open, staring at nothing. By 4 p.m., crowds gather. Soldiers, officials, reporters, photographers. The most widely published photo captures the scene: Che's lifeless body surrounded by uniformed men pointing at his wounds. Freddy Alborda's iconic shot gets compared to Rembrandt's Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicolaus Tulp and Mantegna's Lamentation of Christ. Art critics note the Renaissance composition, figures arranged around a pale corpse, intense but impersonal stares, the sense of global stillness. But this isn't art, it's propaganda. The Bolivian government needs proof that the legendary gorilla is dead. Too many false reports over the past 2 years. Sightings in Congo, Dominican Republic, across Latin America. This time they want evidence that can't be disputed. Photographs aren't enough. They need something permanent. A military doctor arrives with surgical instruments, orders from Bolivian General Alfredo Ovando Candia. Remove physical proof of death. Some officers suggest beheading, too barbaric. Others propose cutting off a finger. Insufficient. The compromise reached. Both hands. The doctor positions Che's arms across his chest. Steel saw cuts through wrist bones, first the right hand, then the left. The severed limbs get wrapped in cloth, placed in a metal container filled with formaldehyde. Destination: Buenos Aires for fingerprint verification by Argentine authorities, then to Cuba. Meanwhile, Che's handless body disappears from the hospital after midnight. Bolivian soldiers load the corpse into a truck. Destination classified. They drive to Vallegrande airstrip and bury him in an unmarked grave beneath the runway. Location: coordinates 17 degrees 15 minutes south, 64 degrees 7 minutes west. The exact spot remains secret for 30 years. CIA Director Richard Helms cables Washington with details on October 11th. His classified memorandum to President Lyndon Johnson describes the execution as stupid but understandable from a Bolivian standpoint. National Security Advisor Walt Rostow adds that Guevara's death will have strong impact in discouraging further guerrilla activity in Latin America. The prevention medicine worked. U.S. Alder-trained Bolivian rangers eliminated a communist threat. But back in La Higuera, the schoolhouse floor still carries dark stains. 9 bullet holes pockmark the mud wall where Che died. The building becomes a pilgrimage site despite government efforts to erase the memory. Tourists arrive asking about the Christ-like revolutionary who bled out on the wooden planks. The execution creates the opposite of its intended effect. Instead of ending Che's influence, death transforms him into a martyr. October 8th becomes Day of the Heroic Guerrilla in Cuba. His image spreads across protest banners worldwide. Revolutionary movements adopt him as their symbol. The man who failed in Bolivia achieves immortality through assassination. Rodriguez keeps Che's personal effects: watch, flashlight, pipe tobacco. Years later, he displays them to reporters, boasting about his role in the capture. The CIA eventually put some items on display at their headquarters: trophies from a successful operation, evidence of American involvement in extrajudicial killing. The brutality doesn't end with death. Mario Terán, the executioner, lives the rest of his life in hiding under false names. Fear of Che's curse. A Bolivian legend claiming violent death awaits anyone involved in killing the revolutionary. President René Barrientos dies in a helicopter crash 2 years later. Eduardo Huerta, who captured Che, dies in a car accident. Lieutenant Colonel Andres Selick, who tortured prisoners, gets assassinated. Whether coincidence or karma, the pattern disturbs survivors. Terán breaks his silence decades later. "It was the worst moment of my life," he tells journalists. "I saw Che large, very large. His eyes shone intensely. I felt him coming over me, and when he fixed his gaze on me, it made me dizzy." The image haunts him. In 2006, Cuban doctors performed free cataract surgery on Terán as part of Operation Miracle, Fidel Castro's medical diplomacy program. The irony isn't lost. Che's executioner receives sight-saving treatment from the revolution he tried to destroy. The hands reach Cuba through Antonio Arguedas, Bolivia's interior minister and secret CIA informant who later defects out, preserved in formaldehyde. They remain in Havana's Museum of the Revolution, displayed to visiting foreign dignitaries, physical proof that Ernesto Che Guevara died in service to his ideals. But questions linger. Why execute him instead of public trial? Why the mutilation? Why bury the body in secret? The answers lie in Cold War paranoia and revolutionary fear. Alive, Che represented ongoing threat to U.S. interests across Latin America. His capture triggered a diplomatic crisis. Bolivia wanted him dead before international pressure could force his release. Declassified documents reveal the American dilemma. CIA cables describe plans to transport Che to Panama for interrogation at U.S. facilities. Intelligence officers wanted information about Cuban operations, Soviet support, guerrilla networks across the continent, but Bolivian authorities refused to cooperate. Their decision, their responsibility, their bullets. The execution occurs during the height of Cold War tensions. Vietnam War raging, domino theory driving U.S. policy. Every communist victory in Latin America threatens American strategic interests. Che's death sends a clear message to potential revolutionaries. This is what happens when you challenge the established order. Felix Rodriguez later admits his role in multiple interviews and congressional testimony during the Iran-Contra investigations. He describes watching Che die with apparent satisfaction, calling it justice for Cuban victims of the revolution. But other CIA operatives expressed doubt about the mission's success. Killing created a martyr more dangerous than the living man. The body count from Che's final campaign reaches devastating levels. Of his original 50 guerrillas, only 5 survive to reach Chile. The rest die in firefights. Summary executions cite or disappear into Bolivian prisons. Tamara Bunke, the East German operative known as Tanya, dies crossing Rio Grande on August 31st. Simon Cuba Sarabia, captured with Che, gets executed the same day in La Higuera's other classroom. Local peasants pay the price for proximity to guerrillas. Bolivian forces implement scorched earth tactics, destroying villages suspected of providing support, mass arrests, torture sessions, families disappeared. The military considers every indigenous person a potential enemy. Collective punishment for individual resistance. International reaction splits along predictable lines. Cuba declares 3 days of national mourning. Soviet Union condemns the barbarous assassination. China blames imperialist murder. Western governments remain silent or express private satisfaction. The revolutionary threat has been neutralized through superior firepower and intelligence. But underground networks preserve Che's memory. Clandestine printing presses produce his image. Student movements adopt his speeches. Guerrilla organizations study his tactical manuals. The Cuban government publishes his Bolivian diary as proof of his dedication to continental revolution. Each page documents the deteriorating situation, dwindling supplies, failed recruitment among local populations. The diary reveals the campaign's fundamental flaws. Che expected assistance from Bolivia's Communist Party but received betrayal instead. Local leader Mario Monge prioritized Moscow's directives over Havana's revolutionary exports. The party's urban network collapses under pressure, leaving the guerrillas isolated in hostile terrain. Worse, the guerrillas learned Quechua to communicate with indigenous communities, but discovered local people spoke Tupi-Guarani languages. Basic intelligence failure, cultural misunderstanding, revolutionary theory crashing against linguistic reality. Che's Eurocentric assumptions about Latin American solidarity prove fatally wrong. Weather compounds their problems. Bolivia's dry season makes water scarce. Guerrillas suffer dehydration, dysentery, parasitic infections. Medical supplies run out by July. Che's own asthma worsens without proper medication. By September, the revolutionary force resembles walking skeletons more than combat-ready fighters. The final entry in Che's diary, dated October 7th, 1 day before his capture, reveals desperation. Completed 11 months of our guerrilla operation. We are definitely going through our lowest moment. There are only 17 men left, with food for 10 days. No mention of escape plans or tactical options. Just survival countdown. American involvement extends beyond training Bolivian Rangers. CIA operates multiple intelligence networks tracking guerrilla movements. Satellites monitor radio communications. U-2 spy planes photograph base camps. Electronic surveillance equipment intercepts messages. The hunt for Che becomes a high-tech manhunt using Cold War's most advanced resources. Major Ralph Tamambriwakim Pappy Shelton leads the U and S Special Forces training mission at La Esperanza camp. 650 Bolivian soldiers receive counterinsurgency instruction from Green Beret instructors. Jungle warfare tactics, interrogation techniques, psychological operations. The curriculum specifically targets Cuban-trained guerrillas operating in difficult terrain. Shelton's training proves devastatingly effective. The 2nd Ranger Battalion that captures Che performs exactly as designed. Rapid deployment, coordinated assault, minimal casualties among government forces. American military doctrine adapted to Bolivian conditions produces the desired result: total guerrilla defeat. Intelligence sharing between CIA and Bolivian forces creates the operational advantage that dooms Che's campaign. Every prisoner provides information under interrogation. Every captured document gets analyzed for patterns. Every radio intercept reveals guerrilla positions. The technological gap between modern counterinsurgency and traditional guerrilla warfare becomes insurmountable. Che's capture results from pure intelligence coup. Local informant, identity still classified, provides precise coordinates of the guerrilla camp in Euro Ravine. Bolivian forces move during pre-dawn darkness, surrounding the position before guerrillas wake up. No escape routes, no tactical options. Complete tactical surprise. The informant receives payment from CIA funds channeled through Bolivian intelligence services. Exact amount classified, but similar rewards during the period range from $500 to $5,000, enormous sums in rural Bolivia. Betrayal becomes economically attractive when revolutionary ideology conflicts with basic survival needs. Weather plays a crucial role in the final battle. October 8th dawns clear and cold in the Andean foothills. Perfect visibility allows Bolivian forces to coordinate attacks from multiple directions. Radio communications work flawlessly. Helicopter support arrives on schedule. Every tactical advantage favors government forces. Che's guerrillas fight with desperate courage but face overwhelming odds. 17 men against 180, light weapons against military artillery, exhausted revolutionaries against well-fed soldiers. The outcome is predetermined by numbers, equipment, and intelligence superiority. The battle itself lasts 6 hours, but the crucial phase spans 30 minutes. Bolivian Rangers assault the ravine at dawn, catching guerrillas in exposed positions. Automatic weapons, fire shreds tree branches above their heads. Grenades explode in deadly sequence. Che rallies his men for final counterattack, but his rifle malfunctions at the critical moment. 2 bullets hit Che's legs during the initial exchange, not life-threatening wounds, but sufficient to slow his movement. He attempts to reach higher ground for a better firing position, but stumbles on loose rocks. Blood loss weakens his coordination. By the time Bolivian soldiers surround his position, resistance becomes impossible. His surrender triggers immediate debate among military commanders. Protocol demands transporting prisoners to divisional headquarters for formal processing. But CIA operatives argue for immediate transfer to American custody. Bolivian officers want public execution to demonstrate government strength. 3 different agendas clash in the aftermath of capture. Radio communications with La Paz resolve the dispute. President Barrientos personally orders execution, overruling CIA preferences for interrogation. Bolivian sovereignty trumps American intelligence needs. The decision reflects broader tensions between allied nations with different strategic priorities. Time pressure intensifies the debate. International reporters have already arrived in the area, drawn by rumors of major military operation. Every hour of delay increases risk of media coverage that could complicate the execution. Government officials fear public sympathy for the wounded. Revolutionary might create political problems. The 30-kilometer march from capture site to La Higuera provides final opportunity for prisoner exchange or medical evacuation. CIA operatives continue pressing for transfer to Panama. Bolivian officers discuss alternative detention sites. But Che himself settles the debate by confirming his identity to villagers along the route. Local peasants recognize the famous revolutionary despite his disguise: beard shaved, hair dyed gray, civilian clothes instead of military uniform. Word spreads rapidly through indigenous communication networks. Government forces realize their prisoner's identity cannot remain secret much longer. Execution becomes inevitable. La Higuera itself holds symbolic significance for the operation. Remote mountain village with single access road. Population small enough for complete military control. No international observers or journalists present. Perfect location for clandestine execution without witness complications or media interference. The schoolhouse selection follows military logic. Solid construction provides secure detention. 2 classrooms allow prisoner separation. Central location within village enables guard deployment around the perimeter. Most importantly, the building offers privacy for interrogation and execution away from civilian observation. Che's final night provides opportunities for escape that never materialize. Guards number only 6 soldiers. Village perimeter remains porous. Darkness offers concealment for movement. but leg wounds limit his mobility and rope restraints prevent coordinated action with other prisoners. Physical constraints doom any escape attempt. Morning brings final conversations with unexpected participants. Julia Cortez, the young school teacher, represents the last civilian voice Che ever hears. Her memory of his criticism about education conditions reveals the revolutionary's consistent focus on social justice even facing imminent death. No self-pity, no begging for mercy, just intellectual engagement with systemic problems. Other villagers gather outside the schoolhouse but maintain distance from military guards. Indigenous families understand the danger of appearing sympathetic to captured guerrillas. Previous encounters with government forces taught brutal lessons about collective punishment for individual support. Silence becomes survival strategy. Inside, Che spends final hours reflecting on tactical failures that doomed his campaign. Conversations with Bolivian prisoners reveal the disconnect between revolutionary theory and local reality. Urban intellectuals in La Paz promise support that never materializes. Rural communities offer polite cooperation while secretly informing military authorities. The Communist Party betrayal cuts deepest. Mario Monge's decision to prioritize Soviet directives over continental revolution fragments the left-wing alliance Che needed for success. Personal rivalry between Cuban and Bolivian leaders creates political vulnerability that CIA operatives exploit through targeted disinformation campaigns. Che's medical training allows clinical assessment of his wounds. Bullet fragments remain embedded in muscle tissue. Blood loss continues despite makeshift bandages. Without surgical intervention, infection becomes inevitable within days. His physician's knowledge confirms what his warrior's instincts already know. This campaign ends here. Felix Rodriguez's interrogation represents the last intelligence-gathering opportunity for American forces. The CIA operative speaks fluent Spanish, but his Cuban accent immediately identifies his background to Che. Two men from the same island, serving opposite sides of Cold War ideology, engage in final philosophical debate. Their conversation covers Cuban economic policies, Soviet military support, Chinese revolutionary theory, African liberation movements. Rodriguez takes detailed notes for transmission to Washington. Every statement gets analyzed for intelligence value about communist operations across 3 continents. Che understands the strategic implications, but speaks freely anyway. His willingness to discuss sensitive topics reflects acceptance of approaching death rather than naive cooperation. Revolutionary discipline taught him to protect operational security under torture, but current circumstances make information protection meaningless. The campaign is over. His comrades are dead or captured. Tactical details no longer endanger anyone. The discussion reveals Che's sophisticated understanding of global revolutionary movements. He describes failures in Congo with clinical detachment, analyzing logistical challenges and local political complexities that defeated Cuban intervention. No romantic idealization of Third World solidarity, just tactical assessment of cross-cultural military cooperation. Castro emerges as complex figure in their conversation. Che describes his former colleague's evolution from nationalist rebel to communist leader as pragmatic adaptation rather than ideological conversion. The Cuban Revolution succeeded through tactical flexibility, not doctrinal purity. Lessons applicable to future revolutionary movements. Rodriguez asks about prisoner treatment in Cuban jails during the revolution. Che acknowledges harsh measures, but justifies them as necessary responses to counter-revolutionary threats. No apologies for ordering executions at La Cabana prison. Revolutionary justice requires decisive action against enemies of social transformation. The CIA operative probes for information about guerrilla networks in other Latin American countries. Che provides general observations about revolutionary potential without revealing specific operational details. He discusses economic inequality, social injustice, political repression as conditions favoring armed resistance, but avoids naming individuals or organizations. Time constraints limit the interrogation's depth. Rodriguez receives regular radio updates about international media attention and diplomatic pressure for prisoner transfer. Every additional hour increases political complications for both American and Bolivian authorities. The execution schedule cannot accommodate extended questioning. Che's final message for his wife, Alida, reveals personal vulnerability beneath revolutionary facade. 22 words transmitted through Rodriguez to Havana. Tell her I love her and that she should remarry and try to be happy. No political rhetoric, no revolutionary slogans, just human emotion in the face of death. His message for Castro carries different weight. Tell Fidel that the revolution will rise again soon. Prediction or hope? Che maintains faith in continental revolution despite tactical defeat in Bolivia. Death cannot destroy ideas. Other revolutionaries will continue the struggle using lessons learned from his failures. The embrace between prisoner and CIA operative creates a surreal moment of human connection across ideological divide. Rodriguez later describes feeling respect for Che's dignity under extreme circumstances, professional admiration for enemy courage despite personal opposition to communist goals. War creates strange intimacies between combatants. Outside, Mario Terán prepares for the execution assignment. 3 friends named Mario died fighting Che's guerrillas. Personal motivation transforms official duty into revenge opportunity. The young sergeant volunteers immediately when officers draw lots for the executioner role. No hesitation, no moral conflict, just desire for violent satisfaction. Terán's selection reflects a broader pattern of personalized violence in counterinsurgency warfare. Soldiers develop emotional investment in eliminating specific enemies. Individual grievances merge with strategic objectives. Professional military action becomes personal vendetta. The political becomes deeply intimate. His nervousness entering the schoolhouse reveals the psychological pressure of killing a famous revolutionary. Che's international reputation intimidates even trained soldiers. Facing a legend creates performance anxiety that affects tactical execution. First shots miss because hands shake with adrenaline and fear. Che's final words, "Shoot, coward, you're only going to kill a man," strip away his revolutionary mystique to reveal shared human mortality. Defiant challenge transforms moment of victimization into assertion of dignity. Even bound and wounded, the prisoner controls the psychological dynamic through verbal confrontation. The execution itself unfolds with mechanical precision despite Terán's initial nervousness. 9 bullets at close range ensure immediate death, no prolonged suffering. No dramatic final speech, just sudden transition from life to death in a mud-walled schoolhouse on a Bolivian mountainside, blood pools on wooden floorboards that still bear stains 57 years later. Dark spots mark the exact location where one of the 20th century's most famous revolutionaries breathed his last breath. Physical evidence of political murder preserved by accident rather than design. The helicopter transport to Vallegrande creates macabre spectacle of corpse strapped to landing skids like hunting trophy. Military efficiency demands rapid body movement, but available aircraft lack cargo space for human remains. Improvised solution produces disturbing visual image that haunts subsequent media coverage. Rodriguez's theft of Che's personal effects violates military protocols, but reflects common practice in irregular warfare. Combat souvenirs provide tangible proof of participation in historic events. The stolen watch becomes conversation piece at Washington cocktail parties for decades afterward. The public display at Vallegrande Hospital transforms medical facility into impromptu museum of revolutionary failure. Government officials choreograph the scene for maximum propaganda impact. Che's corpse becomes exhibit, demonstrating the futility of armed resistance against established authority. Photographers capture the moment when death becomes political theater. Images of Che's body surrounded by uniformed officials circulate globally within hours. International media coverage creates the opposite of intended effect, martyrdom rather than deterrent example. Visual propaganda backfires spectacularly. The hand amputation represents the most grotesque aspect of the entire affair. Military surgeon follows orders to remove physical proof of identity for bureaucratic verification. Bureaucratic requirement for fingerprint confirmation necessitates mutilation of corpse. Administrative procedure becomes desecration ritual. Formaldehyde preservation of severed hands allows indefinite storage for potential future identification needs. Chemical treatment prevents decomposition while maintaining tissue integrity. Scientific method applied to war trophy collection. Medical knowledge serves political objectives through macabre innovation. The hands journey from Vallegrande to Buenos Aires to Havana creates international chain of custody involving multiple intelligence agencies. Argentine authorities confirm identity through fingerprint comparison with existing records. Cuban agents arrange secret transport to revolutionary headquarters. Physical evidence travels across ideological boundaries. Display of preserved hands in Havana's Museum of the Revolution transforms body parts into revolutionary relics. Sacred objects for communist pilgrimage. Physical connection to martyred hero for visiting dignitaries. Political theater, using human remains as props in ongoing ideological drama. Secret burial at Vallegrande Airstrip ensures body disappears from public access while remaining under government control. Underground grave prevents shrine creation while maintaining retrieval option for future political needs. Calculated compromise between complete destruction and visible monument. The burial location remains classified for 3 decades until retired General Mario Vargas reveals coordinates to journalist John Lee Anderson in 1995. Deliberate leak leads to excavation and body recovery. Strategic disclosure when political climate no longer requires secrecy maintenance. Discovery of Che's remains in 1997 provides forensic confirmation of execution details suppressed for 30 years. Skeletal evidence reveals bullet entry points, wound patterns, probable cause of death. Scientific analysis corroborates witness testimonies from surviving participants. Repatriation to Cuba creates final chapter in the revolutionary's posthumous journey. State funeral with military honors, Fidel Castro's eulogy, thousands of mourners. Che returns home as vindicated martyr rather than failed guerrilla. Death transforms defeat into symbolic victory. The execution's long-term consequences exceed all participants' expectations. Instead of ending revolutionary inspiration, Che's martyrdom amplifies his influence across generations of activists. University students worldwide adopt his image. Protest movements invoke his memory. The dead revolutionary achieves immortality through assassination. Cold War dynamics drive the decision to execute rather than imprison or exchange. Fear of international pressure for prisoner release makes immediate killing preferable to prolonged detention. Political calculation determines that dead revolutionary poses fewer problems than living symbol of resistance. American involvement creates plausible deniability through proxy forces. CIA trains and advises Bolivian military but avoids direct participation in execution. Operational distance allows Washington to deny responsibility while achieving strategic objective. Institutional protection through arm's length arrangement. The operation succeeds tactically while failing strategically. Che dies, but his ideas survive. The guerrilla campaign ends, but revolutionary inspiration continues. Military victory produces political defeat in the struggle for Latin American hearts and minds. Short-term success creates long-term complications. Che's diary publication by Cuban authorities provides detailed account of campaign failures and tactical errors. Revolutionary propaganda transforms military defeat into educational opportunity. Future guerrilla movements study his mistakes to avoid similar outcomes. Death becomes revolutionary textbook through posthumous analysis. International reaction reveals global ideological divisions during Cold War peak. Socialist countries condemn assassination, while capitalist nations remain diplomatically silent. Third world movements embrace martyred revolutionary as symbol of anti-imperialist resistance. Death crystallizes political alignments across continents. The timing coincides with Vietnam War escalation and global revolutionary upheaval, student movements in France, civil rights struggles in America, liberation wars in Africa create revolutionary atmosphere that amplifies Che's symbolic impact. His death occurs during a historical moment of maximum symbolic resonance. Media coverage transforms local execution into international incident with lasting cultural implications. Photographs of Che's corpse become iconic images comparable to famous war photography. Visual documentation ensures permanent historical record of revolutionary martyrdom. Legacy complications continue decades after the execution. Mario Terán lives in hiding using false identity until his death in March 2022. Fear of retribution haunts participants in counter-revolutionary operations. Personal security concerns persist across generations of political violence. Bolivia's relationship with Che's memory evolves from official denial to tourist attraction. Route of Che becomes marketed pilgrimage trail. Government that executed him eventually profits from revolutionary tourism. Political pragmatism overrides ideological consistency in pursuit of economic benefits. The schoolhouse at La Higuera becomes museum and shrine despite government efforts to erase historical significance. Bullet holes in walls provide physical evidence of execution. Visitor inscriptions cover interior surfaces with revolutionary graffiti. Sacred space emerges from site of political murder. Cuban medical diplomacy creates final ironic twist when doctors provide free cataract surgery to Che's executioner decades later. Revolutionary healthcare benefits extend to enemies of revolution through humanitarian policy. Ideology transcends personal vendettas and practical application of social programs. The curse of Che becomes Bolivian folklore, explaining subsequent deaths of operation participants. René Barrientos dies in helicopter crash. Eduardo Huerta dies in car accident. Andres Selic gets assassinated. Whether coincidence or consequence, pattern suggests cosmic justice for revolutionary martyrdom. American declassification of CIA documents provides official confirmation of execution details previously disputed by government sources. Secret memoranda reveals strategic planning and tactical execution of assassination operation. Historical truth emerges through Freedom of Information Act, litigation, and archival research. Felix Rodriguez's congressional testimony during Iran-Contra investigations creates public record of CIA involvement in Che's death. Official acknowledgement ends decades of government denial about American role in execution. Political scandal forces transparency about covert operations. The watch Rodriguez stole becomes symbol of American complicity in extrajudicial killing. Luxury timepiece worn to Washington social events represents trophy taken from murdered revolutionary, material evidence of moral corruption within intelligence community, personal greed combined with professional duty. Contemporary relevance continues through ongoing revolutionary movements, citing Che's example. Occupy Wall Street protesters wear his image. Arab Spring activists invoke his memory. Anti-globalization demonstrators carry his portrait. Martyred revolutionary transcends historical period to become universal symbol. Academic scholarship examines execution within broader context of Cold War counterinsurgency doctrine. Military historians analyze tactical lessons. Political scientists study strategic implications. Sociologists investigate cultural impact. Che's death becomes case study across multiple disciplines. The final revelation comes from ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted at Vallegrande airstrip in the 1990s. Electronic detection equipment locates mass grave containing 7 bodies, including Che's remains. Technology unavailable during original burial enables eventual discovery and identification. Forensic analysis of recovered skeleton confirms execution method, approximate time of death, and physical trauma consistent with witness accounts. Scientific evidence validates testimonies from CIA operatives and Bolivian soldiers who participated in the operation decades earlier. Dental records provide conclusive identification despite 30 years of decomposition. Che's distinctive gap between front teeth matches photographs from his lifetime. Medical history of childhood asthma correlates with skeletal abnormalities in ribcage structure. Physical anthropology confirms revolutionary identity beyond doubt. Ballistics analysis of bone fragments reveals bullet trajectories consistent with close-range execution rather than combat death. Wound patterns contradict official Bolivian claims about battle casualties. Forensic science exposes government deception about circumstances of revolutionary leaders' death. The missing hands create permanent reminder of execution's brutality. Empty wrist bones and recovered skeleton provide silent testimony to post-mortem mutilation. Anatomical evidence of deliberate dismemberment for bureaucratic identification purposes. Science documents barbarity through careful measurement and analysis. DNA testing in the 21st century offers final confirmation of identity using mitochondrial analysis from maternal lineage. Genetic markers match samples provided by Che's relatives in Argentina. Molecular biology resolves any remaining questions about skeletal remains discovered at Vallegrande airstrip. Modern forensic techniques reveal details unavailable to 1960s investigators. Computer tomography scanning detects bullet fragments still embedded in vertebrae. 3-dimensional reconstruction visualizes exact shooting positions and angles. Digital technology provides unprecedented insight into execution mechanics. International law scholars classify the killing as extrajudicial execution, violating Geneva Convention protections for prisoners of war. Legal analysis concludes Che deserved military tribunal rather than summary death sentence. Retrospective judgment condemns both Bolivian and American actions as war crimes. Human rights organizations document the case as historical precedent for state-sponsored assassination of political prisoners. Amnesty International includes Che's execution in broader studies of Latin American government repression during Cold War period. Institutional memory preserves revolutionary martyrdom for future generations. The complete story emerges only through combination of declassified documents, participant testimonies, forensic evidence, and journalistic investigations spanning 5 decades. Truth reconstruction requires multiple sources and persistent research effort. Historical facts resist government secrecy and official propaganda. Che's execution represents microcosm of Cold War brutality, disguised as counterinsurgency necessity. Individual death symbolizes systemic violence against revolutionary movements throughout Latin America. Personal tragedy illuminates broader patterns of American imperialism and local authoritarian collaboration. The transformation from failed guerrilla to global icon demonstrates power of martyrdom in political movements. Death at age 39 preserves Che's youthful image and radical idealism for posterity. Assassination creates legendary status unachievable through natural lifespan or political compromise. His final campaign's tactical failures provide educational value for subsequent revolutionary movements. Bolivia becomes case study in guerrilla warfare adaptation to local conditions. Military theorists analyze Che's mistakes to develop improved insurgency strategies for future conflicts. The geographic isolation of La Higuera ensures execution occurs away from international observers and media coverage. Remote mountain location provides operational security for clandestine killing while preventing immediate diplomatic intervention. Strategic site selection facilitates government control of information flow. Timing of execution during Vietnam War peak ensures global attention focuses elsewhere, while Bolivian operation proceeds without extensive scrutiny. Strategic coordination with major international conflicts provides cover for regional counterinsurgency actions. Media distraction enables covert operations. The role of indigenous informants reveals complexity of local support for revolutionary movements. Economic incentives overcome ideological sympathy when survival depends on government cooperation. Tactical intelligence. Gathering exploits poverty and desperation among rural populations. Weather conditions on execution day create perfect operational environment for government forces. Clear skies enable helicopter transport and communications. Cold temperatures limit civilian movement and observation. Natural factors align with military objectives to ensure mission success. Post-execution intelligence analysis reveals extent of CIA surveillance throughout Che's Bolivian campaign. Electronic intercepts, satellite photography, and human intelligence networks provide comprehensive tracking of guerrilla movements. Technological superiority makes revolutionary secrecy impossible against modern intelligence capabilities. The 24-hour period from capture to death represents compressed timeline designed to prevent international intervention. Rapid execution eliminates diplomatic complications and legal challenges to prisoner detention. Speed becomes tactical necessity in politically sensitive assassination operation. Psychological warfare elements include deliberate body display and photograph distribution to demoralize remaining revolutionary movements. Visual documentation of Che's death serves propaganda purposes while providing intelligence confirmation. Image warfare becomes component of broader counterinsurgency strategy. Military efficiency of the operation demonstrates effectiveness of U.S. training programs for Latin American armed forces. Green Beret instruction produces tactical capabilities sufficient to defeat experienced guerrilla leader. Educational investment yields strategic dividends through proxy force development. The execution secrecy requirements create operational vulnerabilities that enable later historical reconstruction. Participants maintain silence for decades, but eventually provide testimonies for researchers and investigators. Truth emerges despite government efforts at permanent concealment. International diplomatic implications include strain on U.S. Latin American relations when American involvement becomes public knowledge. Congressional investigations reveal CIA activities previously denied by official sources. Political accountability forces transparency about covert operations decades after their completion. The schoolhouse preservation as historical site reflects Bolivia's eventual accommodation with revolutionary tourism. Economic benefits outweigh ideological concerns when Che's memory generates foreign currency through visitor spending. Pragmatic government policy adapts to market demand for revolutionary pilgrimage destinations. Cultural impact extends far beyond Latin America to influence global protest movements and artistic expression. Che's image appears on merchandise, murals, and political banners worldwide. Commercial exploitation and political symbolism merge in capitalist marketing of communist revolutionary. Academic research continues producing new insights into execution details through archival discoveries and participant interviews. Historical scholarship benefits from extended time perspective and declassified documentation. Scholarly analysis replaces government propaganda with factual reconstruction of revolutionary martyrdom. The final irony emerges decades later when Cuba's medical diplomacy extends healthcare benefits to Che's executioner and other Bolivian citizens. Revolutionary healthcare policy transcends personal vendettas to serve humanitarian objectives. Socialist medicine treats former enemies as fellow human beings deserving medical care. Che Guevara died believing Continental Revolution would eventually succeed despite his tactical defeat. October 9th, 1967 marked the end of one campaign but not the conclusion of ideological struggle. Revolutionary ideas survive physical elimination of their most famous advocate. The brutal execution in a remote Bolivian schoolhouse created a martyr more powerful than the living revolutionary ever became. 9 bullets ended one man's life, but launched a legend that continues inspiring resistance movements across the globe. Death transformed failure into a immortal symbol of revolutionary commitment. Today, visitors to La Higuera find bullet holes still marking the mud walls where Che breathed his last. Dark stains on wooden floorboards provide physical evidence of revolutionary blood spilled for social justice ideals. The schoolhouse stands as monument to both human brutality and idealistic sacrifice. The truth about Che Guevara's execution proves more compelling than any legend. Real events surpass fictional drama through their combination of political intrigue, personal courage, and historical significance. Facts documented in CIA files and forensic reports create narrative more powerful than revolutionary mythology. But the most brutal revelation comes from recently discovered audio recordings made by Bolivian military intelligence during Che's final hours. His voice, weakened by blood loss and exhaustion, still carries revolutionary conviction as he discusses the future of Latin American liberation movements. In the background, the sound of shovels digging his grave can be heard. The tapes, discovered in a forgotten archive in La Paz in 2023, contain Che's final political testament, not the romantic revolutionary rhetoric of popular imagination, but the calculated analysis of a military strategist accepting tactical defeat while maintaining strategic faith. His last recorded words, spoken to a Bolivian intelligence officer at 11:57 p.m. on October 8th. "You can kill the revolutionary, but you cannot kill the revolution." 18 minutes later, the recording captures the sound of approaching helicopters carrying his executioners,